Ta-da! We are live.
We are live. We a minute ago we talked about what could happen.
Okay, last minute, documents are lost, streams are offline. No, we made it actually. Welcome to another episode of Labs Talk. Today we have a very special guest because we're sitting here with Marielle Ehrmann, and you're the Chief Security and Compliance Officer of SAP, which is amazing. So welcome to the show.
Thanks so much.
And could be maybe, so we just had a session internally at SAP here in the auditorium at SAP Labs Munich here. And we learned, for example, that you're a road cyclist.
That's correct. And I learned you're cycling as well. That's
yes, exactly.
Yes, we are.
So where was your last trip taking you actually?
Oh, one of the last trips was actually in the French Alps. So
Oh, wow.
I like that area a lot. Really gives you the spirit also of Tour de France, and
Yeah.
you have those really high roads for climbing. That's fabulous.
I just know Tour de France actually from Swift. So I'm an indoor Swift cycler, right? And they have like a special Tour de France thing right now.
Swift,
so
exactly.
Tour de Swift, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So much fun. Yeah.
But I found it super interesting actually how you relate security also to your private adventures, I would call it, right? So because you told us that you're, for example, not posting that you go in the future, but you always post basically afterwards, right?
Exactly,
so that's what I find really smart. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the easy measures you can do in your everyday life. When you're off for vacation, just post it a few days later, because there are so many attacks also to your private life, like robbery, stuff like that.
On a side note, I heard that on another podcast just yesterday or 2 days ago. There used to be a service. Some guy offered a service to skim through tweets and automate that all out of office type of thing, like robme.com or something. They just went through tweets from public tweets from people, and they just announced whenever somebody's announced to be out for that particular reason.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's sometimes the easy measures, and actually there's so many parallels to cycling or sports and security. Before I go on the bike, and I'm pretty sure it's the same for you, you're checking your brakes. Actually, that's risk management.
Yeah.
So before going downhill, the brakes should work.
Absolutely. Another thing that I just learned is, and it's also related to being robbed, basically, right? So that you're not just responsible, because that's going to be the focus of our show today, right? We're going to talk about cloud software and risk and compliance, basically in the cloud mainly. But you're also responsible when it comes to physical security of buildings, right? So we just talked about me going to the calisthenics park actually here behind the building, and what happens if you see an open door, basically, right? So that's interesting. So you're also really dealing with security people in all these SAP Labs offices, basically, right? So
exactly, it's a very holistic responsibility for Sebastian and myself, and we're coming to Sebastian in a moment, just raising also his name. So yeah, we are responsible for everything that belongs to security, also including cyber security and the physical security side of the house, as well as the cloud compliance piece.
Wow, because that's a huge topic actually, but let's focus on the cloud.
It sounds pretty big, but you mentioned that just before you're in a co-leadership role. And I remember you talked about that co-leadership downstairs in that previous session, and you also talked about how you're doing that together with Sebastian. But for our audience, tell us a little bit, what is co-leadership? Does it mean you're working part-time and Sebastian does just take the other half of the hour?
Honestly, that was my first take for me actually, was that probably means it's some super innovative 50% job also, right? So something like that.
So that's probably not how it works, but let us know how does it really work?
Not really. Together we can give 250% for this super important
I trust
topic.
you.
Sounds like a win-win situation.
It is, and I mean it's a fabulous combination of putting equal focus on cybersecurity, on physical security, as well as cloud compliance and risk management. Yeah, because both topics are, there are two sides of the same coin, to call it like that. For a global cloud provider like SAP, it's still a very rare model in the industry. So we have equal responsibility, Sebastian, myself. He's based out of the US. I'm based out of our headquarters in Waldorf. So we actually cover 24/7 for those topics. But we also have our specific focus areas. So he's focusing on the cybersecurity part. I'm focusing on the cloud compliance part. And together we have that holistic responsibility to ensure that we are safe in the cloud, that we are compliant in the cloud for SAP and for sure for our customers.
Yeah. So it doesn't mean that you have one single inbox and you just pick whatever email comes up
Whatever you like.
but you have separate roles basically, and those who you deal with basically know exactly when to contact you. And Sebastian.
Allow me that question that's not in the script, but are there topics that neither of you like?
There will always be topics, but I mean, we are super responsible in that role, and this is also why it's so super important that we have our daily interactions, and that when my day ends, he's aware of what happened during Waldorf time, so he can take over for the US time zone. And no, there are no topics I keep until he wakes up, and neither does he.
No, it really does super complementing each other.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Exactly. But what I want to mention, it's also super important if anyone is thinking about a co-leadership, that you need a lot of trust into your co-lead. And I'm super happy to have Sebastian, because we are very, very well aligned. We are really trusting each other. We are sharing nearly everything. And I think that's a key factor to make this a winning setup.
Very cool. So let's talk about the office, right? So SGST, I have to read that actually. So I think that's okay, because it's a crazy acronym. It means SAP Global Security and Cloud Compliance, basically, right?
Exactly.
Can you shed some light on what that means on a daily basis? What are the things you're dealing with, especially when it comes to cloud software? Let's put it that way.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think you already mentioned the key word, namely cloud. And we as SAP, we are a global cloud provider, means our customers are trusting us with their data, with all of their operations. So this is exactly what we are covering. So our customers trust us that we are preventing and reducing security and compliance risks for them. They truly entrust us their data. So we're doing this by really delivering risk-based business context and automation-driven central processes across SAP. We are assuring that we are compliant with all of our services. And with that, we are really a business enabler in our role, because our customers can only use our software if we are compliant, if we are secure. So that is also what excites me actually each and every day, that it's not like it's one of the table stakes, security and compliance. It's a really, really cool topic, because only because of having security in place and having compliance in place, our customers are able to use our data and our software and our products.
Absolutely, totally a business enabler actually, right? So otherwise totally nobody would be able to use it.
And now that you mentioned that it's not just the boring stuff, but it's a very cool topic, that the public perception often is from the, say, hacker side, from the opposing side, and there is movies, there is hackers that are the cool people, but you're playing the other role, and everything you as a consumer you pick up about securities whenever a breach happens. We just had a global incident on primetime news that happened, and that's the thing you get as a consumer whenever something happened. But your role is to prevent all of that, and I imagine there is also trend topics, and you need to be aware and on top of the cool stuff and what's going on. Can you talk a little bit about that? What's the really, not just what is it that makes your role so cool, how you call it?
And also here I want to split that a little bit between security and compliance. So yeah, I think we all have in mind how a hacker looks like. Always dressed in black and looking a little bit angry. Those cool guys out there.
No hoodie.
I don't think they typically wear an SAP logo on the black shirt.
No, and it's too warm for a hoodie right
I
now.
hope not. I hope not. So what we are seeing in the cybersecurity side of the house, that across the industry, so SAP is not alone in the center, but that across the industry we see an immense increase of hacker attacks. Yeah, that's for sure. We see a lot of bad actors, and those guys are really increasingly sophisticated. How they are working, how they are attacking. So that is one of the key pillars where we are keeping that in mind in our risk management, but also the nation state attacks are increasing. Yeah, so there's a lot of money flowing into those kind of attacks, and those kind of cyber attacks then usually carried out by state-sponsored hackers are also increasing in the number. And on the other hand side, there's a lot of new regulation coming to a market. So SAP is selling our cloud software into nearly every market of the world, into nearly any industry, and all of those markets and industries are heavily regulated. So keeping up with all of those regulations is another super interesting factor in our job.
So to summarize that a little bit, you have a high barrier of regulation that you have to fulfill in your role. That's your responsibility. Exactly. Those regulations, that compliance is met. That's the one part of it. And on the other side, there is hackers that increasingly get sophisticated, and state-sponsored actors. They have a lot of capabilities behind them, I need to assume. So there is a very high potential on the other side. That does sound like there's a lot of tension, and that must create some real situations that give you a heart attack. And with that, there's a high risk that something happens, and there is compliance. Maybe for those listening to our show, explain a little bit how risk and compliance relate to each other.
Could I add one question? Actually, what's your recommendation for sleeping well? Actually, when you're dealing with so much risk,
more road cycling.
It sounds like, honestly, you mentioned heart attack. It's like my pulse is, I think, getting higher the moment you say, like, you mentioned all these things. So it's
actually, it's the same for human mankind as it is for technology or the cloud business. Resiliency is the key factor. And I think Sebastian and myself are very well aware about the risks we have to deal with. So transparency is key. Also, proper risk management is key. And then you can really also balance that out. Yeah, you bring the right technology in place. You bring the right defense mechanisms in place to deal with that, and that makes me actually sleep quite well, to be honest. So a resilient business is super important to build that out within our technology, to build that out with our people, because people are core and center for everything we are doing in security and compliance, and that actually makes me sleep much better.
We know, and I think you mentioned that before already, there's frameworks to achieve all of that, and that gives you that peace of mind that makes you sleep well. Can you help us understand a little bit those frameworks? What is the purpose of those frameworks? Eventually, which frameworks we as a company are following, or to put that into perspective, what is a framework for computer security, for cloud security, and how do we use that?
Yeah, and I think there are quite some topics which also the audience might be familiar with, like ISO, SOC, C5, very common certifications across the industry. But in addition to that, I want to give you a very quick introduction to the NIST cybersecurity framework, because I'm personally a huge fan about that. We also implemented across SAP the NIST cybersecurity framework, because it really gives you dedicated categories to focus on, dedicated categories where you can align your risks onto. And I mentioned some of them before, and in combination that builds out resiliency. and it gives you the chance to also have a structured communication of your risks across the organization. So to make that really understandable across all of the layers of the organization, be it talking to a board member or talking to a software developer. Yeah. So the NIST pillars, and that might sound familiar to you, is identify, it's then protect, it's detect, it's responding and recovery. And all of that is accompanied by a strong governance across the organization. So not just trusting that you have implemented all of those pillars, but really controlling it and verifying that this is there. And we as SAP, we implemented the NIST cybersecurity framework. I think that really paid off, that we have that kind of a structured approach across the whole organization, aligning all of our risks towards that. And also Sebastian and myself take that as a common theme for every strategic initiative we are rolling out across the organization, for every goal we are bringing to the organization, to align that to the NIST pillar.
So now the new topic since a year or more than a year actually, right, is Gen AI. And we go full speed into Gen AI, right? So if you listen to Christian Klein, every org here at SAP is completely aligned to that actually, right? And that must be a huge new dimension of risk when it comes to managing the risk also. So can we talk a bit about AI basically, and how AI relates to your role now basically, and to your job, and how it changes your job actually? What are the new topics that we need to discuss now?
Yeah, so for me, it's always the same pattern when we have new innovations, new technology. On the one hand side, it always brings a lot of new opportunities. And on the other hand side, there's new risk factors coming to us as a company. Yeah, so and it's the same with AI actually. I mean, I see a lot of opportunities to use AI to speed up our processes, to analyze huge amounts of data, for example, to also reduce the manual work across the organization, to identify patterns, and so on and so on. And I think that is super exciting to see what is possible with AI, how much we can use the technology for ourselves, but also for our customers. But it's also clear that we have the risk side of the house, and that we need to assure that those risks not becoming true, not for us as a company, but most importantly also not for our customers. And there are key risks we are seeing. One of that is hallucination. If AI sheerly gives out wrong information, a wrong context,
just make something up basically, right?
Make something up.
In your pizza dough.
So,
exactly. Exactly. Or if it just mixes up, you're booking a flight to want to fly to California, San Jose, but then you end up in Costa Rica. Yeah. So
that has a San Jose as well, I guess.
Exactly. Exactly. So that is why a human factor is always so important. And what I like to say is, when it comes to artificial intelligence, human intelligence always helps. To have a closer look at that.
So would you agree that basically the AI is never is in the driver's seat, but more or less like the assistant of like, let's say the humans basically, right? That's probably the best way to pair or to get performance improvements and all the goodness of AI, but in the end still have some kind of safety mechanisms in place that if the AI really makes something up, at least someone would have had a chance to look at it basically before it goes out or before it takes effect or something.
I hope that we as human mankind stay as smart and do exactly that. I have very high ethical values. I don't want to make a machine having the last word or making the final decision for me. I'm very clear with that, and everything I can personally influence, I will do. But we all know about those crazy science fiction movies where AI is taking over, and I don't think that this is an unrealistic scenario. I think it's everyone out there
being discussed.
It's on everyone out there to decide how much we are allowing technology to decide for us.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it's a really great discussion to have, right? I mean, when we talk about, let's say, stupid procurement process or something like that, then a mistake might not be so relevant. But let's talk about health, for example, right?
Exactly.
Where we also, I guess, and also SAP software definitely plays a role, right? Making a mistake there could have some bad effects. So yeah, I find it really interesting to discuss that, and I think that discussion will be a long one to have. Actually,
And it
it's
can
not
go
over.
into all directions, but also
Yeah.
here for Sebastian and myself, it was very clear that we have to be very early in the game, look at the risks that coming towards us, towards our customers, to somewhat forethink that, and also being very clear when it comes to AI ethics. So I'm super happy that SAP is also here a front runner and having clear standards in place and expressing that on what we are supporting and what is surely forbidden. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a very, very interesting insight. But we're here in Labs Talk, and we try to look into the future, and we always want to make up some perspectives. And we're obviously curious, how do you see that entire space for risk, security, compliance? How do you see that change? How is that going to look like in the next, say, 5 or 10 years? What's coming our way?
So I don't think we will have a boring time, in,
which is a good start for
which is always good, also for safeguarding the own job. Yeah, to say that with a little grain of humor. So it's not gonna stop. Yeah, we are seeing heavy investments in both sides, in the attacker space, but also into the prevention space and the protect space. Yeah, so it's like a race. As we were talking,
we come back to the beginning, actually.
To the cycling theme, exactly. So for us, it's super important that we stay resilient, that we are able to safeguard what we have built up, that we stay on top of technology, that we are using technology like AI in such a smart way that it really helps us, and that it's not risking what we have built up. And in the compliance space, our regulators are not stopping. I'm personally a huge fan of regulations. I know that sounds a little bit strange, but also here, it's not going to stop. There are more and more regulations coming up. The question is, how are we treating that? Are we able to keep up with that speed as a company? And I would say yes, we are, because we are constantly looking on how can we standardize, how can we automate internally in SAP. And I think this gives us the huge chance to always keep up with the new uprising regulations coming out of the market. And in the end, we are coming back to the topic from the beginning. With that, we are enabling our customers to use the software.
Perfect. Very nice. Anything to add, Andreas? Or
I think you gave us a very interesting insight.
I found it super interesting. Yeah.
I found it super interesting with that, I guess.
I must admit, I was very, very nervous when it comes to security and compliance, but you made it very, very worthwhile. So thank you so much. That was great to talk to you. Thanks, everybody, for listening. And
thank you for being here. Our pleasure.
Talk soon again.
Thanks for having me. Could be worse than Munich, I'd say. It's really lovely here.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.